Hello and welcome to another of this series on Windows on Advent. And today, which is day 11, we'll be turning our attention to the book of Isaiah. The Virgin shall be with child, and we'll pick up some of the points coming out of that particular prophecy today. When we left the story last time round, we were in the book of 2 Samuel. We were looking at the story of David. And God had promised to David, "Your house and your kingdom shall endure forever before me. Your throne shall be established forever." And the story moves forward. David is the second of the kings of the United Kingdom. Saul was the first. David's son Solomon, as promised by God, becomes the third king. But on the death of Solomon, Rehoboam, his son, isn't particularly wise, and when the young men come to him and say, "What kind of a king are you going to be? Are you going to be as tough as your dad?" He says, "My little finger's thicker than my dad. I'm going to be much, much tougher." So they say, "Well, what part do we have in your kingdom?" And the northern kingdom splits off and is headed up by King Jeroboam, who's actually an army captain, and the southern kingdom is ruled by Rehoboam. So we have two kingdoms at this period in Israel's history. We have the northern kingdom, Israel or Ephraim, and each of those kings, 19 of them, are considered to be bad in God's eyes. None of them follow the Lord's ways. They build high places, they worship other gods, they worship the Baals. Down in the south, of the 20 kings there, 8 of them are considered to be good by God because their heart is turned towards God. As we said yesterday, 12 of them have no heart for God in this southern kingdom. And we're moving towards the end of this period, really, of the kings. God has promised to David that your throne will last forever, and for 400 years, 20 generations, or not 20 generations, but 18 generations of kings come out of David's line. But the promise obviously points forward to the Lord Jesus, who is going to be the king who will reign forever. And our story takes us now to Isaiah. And if you were to say to me, which of the books in the Old Testament could you not do without? It would always be, as far as I'm concerned, the book of Isaiah. Somebody has said that it's like the gospel in miniature. And other people have said it's so deeply theological, it's like having the book of Romans. Imagine having the Gospels and Romans rolled into one book. And it's full of history and it's poetry, and there's narrative in there, but there's prophecy at the heart of it, many of which refer forward to the Lord Jesus Christ, not just to his birth, but to his death and his coming again. And the book itself is essentially split into 3 parts. The first part of the book is about the king. They're all messianic figures, but the king, the first 39 chapters. Then up to chapter 55, we have the messianic servant. And in chapters 56 to 66, we have the conqueror, the messianic conqueror. And that really refers forward to when the Lord Jesus comes as the second coming. But we are in a time during Isaiah's prophecies of King Ahaz. Now, Isaiah prophesies during 4 kings' reigns. There is King Uzziah. So in chapter 6 of Isaiah, we read, "In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple." And that's 740 BC. He had been king for a number of years, been a decent king, but then he got above himself. He got into the temple. He wanted to be a priest as well as the king. And the Lord strikes him with leprosy. And for the latter years of his reign, he is in lockdown. He can't go to the capital. And so Jotham reigns in his place. So Jotham has a 15-year reign, though only 5 of those years come after Uzziah. Following him for 20 years, we get King Ahaz, and he's the one in the story here. And essentially, he is the last free king of Judah. Following him is Hezekiah. He's also a decent king. But then the period of the kingship falls away at that point. And so we've got this chapter here in chapter 7 of Isaiah. And I'm going to read it to you, well, bits of it anyway, the first part of it, because otherwise this prophecy about the virgin shall give birth to a son will not make sense. And we're going to look at this in 2 tranches. The first of these will be here when we look at it in its historical context. And later I'll return to this prophecy and see how it really refers to the Lord Jesus Christ. So when Ahaz, son of Jotham, the son of Uzziah, was king of Judah, King Rezin of Aram and Pekah, son of Remaliah, king of Israel, marched up to fight against Jerusalem, but they could not overpower it. Now that's interesting because on a previous occasion they had overpowered it. Now the house of David was told, this is King Ahaz, Aram has allied itself with Ephraim, so the hearts of Ahaz and his people were shaken, as the trees of the forest are shaken by the wind. Then the Lord said to Isaiah, Go out, you and your son Shear-Jashub, to meet Ahaz at the end of the aqueduct of the upper pool on the road to the washerman's field. Say to him, Be careful, keep calm, and don't be afraid. Do not lose heart because of these two smouldering stubs of firewood, because of the fierce anger of Rezin and Aram, and of the son of Remaliah or Remaliah. Aram, Ephraim, and Remaliah's son have plotted your ruin, saying, Let us invade Judah, let us tear it apart and divide it among ourselves, and make the son of Tabeel king over it. Yet this is what the sovereign Lord says, It will not take place. It will not take place, it will not happen. For the head of Aram is Damascus, and the head of Damascus is only Rezin. Within 65 years, Ephraim will be too shattered to be a people. The head of Ephraim is Samaria, and the head of Samaria is only Remaliah's son. If you do not stand firm in your faith, you will not stand at all. Again the Lord said to Ahaz, Ask the Lord your God for a sign, whether in the deepest depths or in the highest heaven. But King Ahaz said, I will not ask, I will not put the Lord to the test. Then Isaiah said, Hear now, you house of David. Is it not enough to try the patience of men? Will you try the patience of my God also? Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. The virgin will be with child and will give birth to a son, and will call him Emmanuel. And he goes on to say that shortly after this child's birth, these two kingdoms will be smouldering ruins. Interesting. Well, that's the interesting background to it all. So we take this this verse, the virgin shall be with child, and we go, oh, well, immediately everyone thinks about the Lord Jesus Christ. Well, nobody thought about the Lord Jesus Christ. We're talking about 735 BC. I mean, people may well have been thinking that this will refer to the Messiah, but they may well not have been, because it's in its original context here. And the Lord is giving a sign to this apostate king, and he says, Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. The virgin will be with child and will give birth to a son, and will call him Emmanuel. Now, this conversation between Ahaz and Isaiah, Israel is already doomed, says Isaiah. And Israel is doomed because this is 735 BC. By 722, Israel goes off into captivity. Assyria comes over about 600 miles from the east and takes Israel off as captive. And the 10 tribes of Israel are broken. And 732 BC, Aram, which is really Syria, is also taken away into captivity. So these two kings who are coming together to fight against the Assyrians and really want Judah to join with them are going to be broken. And God says, don't trust them. Don't trust in men. Trust in me. Trust in me. Emmanuel, I'll give you a sign. The sign is Emmanuel. Emmanuel means God with us. What the Lord is saying here is, listen, I am with you. The Lord is with you. The Lord will go with you into battle. Don't trust mankind. But the king, Ahaz, will not. So what he does is he goes out to Assyria. He pays a lot of money. He becomes a tribute country. And forever after, Israel is really subject to other great empires, such as the Assyrians or the Babylonians. And later they're taken off into captivity by the Babylonians. And then they become tribute, as it were, to Persia and the Medes. And later the Greeks, although they defeat the Greeks. And obviously the Romans. So there's this whole top-downing thing there in history. And the sign is that the virgin shall conceive. Now, I don't want to say a lot about this at the moment, but the word used for virgin here is Alma, A-L-M-A, or A-L-M-A-H, a bit like Alma. There's another word that could be used for young woman, is Betula. Alma turns up 8 times, Betula turns up 50 times. Really meaning someone that's of a marriageable age. But Alma is not usually used of a married woman, and that's what the phrase is here. And in the New Testament, we're going to find that Matthew applies this to the Virgin Mary, and to the birth of the Lord Jesus. But that's for another time. And she's going to give birth to a son, and the son's going to be called Emmanuel. The prophet Isaiah, and this is a bit strange, the prophet Isaiah goes into the prophetess. We don't know whether it's his first wife or his second wife, and she has a son already. He's had a son called Shear-Jashub. But here he has a son called Maher-Shalal-Hash-Baz, which means quick to the plunder, swift to the spoil. And really, that suggestion is that Israel's enemies will be destroyed, but Israel itself will suffer. This child, who is to be called Emmanuel, appears to be called Maher-Shalal-Hash-Baz. But maybe the name is symbolic. Maybe the fact that it's Emmanuel means that God is with us in the battle, and it's symptomatic of who he is, as opposed to his name, symptomatic of his character. But God has promised to be with them. And interestingly enough, when we move into chapter 8, we read, devise your strategy, but it will not be thwarted. Propose your plan, but it will not stand, for God is with us. And that's Isaiah speaking a word to Assyria. God is with us. Emmanuel is with us. Later, of course, this is going to become a picture of the Lord Jesus. And the Lord spoke to me with his strong hand upon me, says Isaiah, warning me not to follow the way of this people. He said, do not call conspiracy everything that these people call conspiracy. Do not fear what they fear, and do not dread it. The Lord Almighty is the one you are to regard as holy. He is the one you are to fear. He is the one you are to dread. And he will be a sanctuary but for both houses of Israel. He will be a stone that causes men to stumble, and a rock that makes them fall. And for the people of Jerusalem he will be a trap and a snare. Many of them will stumble. They will fall and be broken. They will be snared and captured. Bind up the testimony and seal up the law among my disciples. I will wait for the Lord, who is hiding his face from the house of Jacob. I will put my trust in him. Here am I, and the children the Lord has given me. We are signs and symbols in Israel from the Lord Almighty. And he goes on to speak then about a time of darkness and deep distress will come upon the land, and that's picked up later in chapter 9 of Isaiah. Enough for now, but just to say to you, this is a passage rooted in history, and it's a passage to let Judah know that God is with them. And before ever it became understood latterly as a prophecy about the Lord Jesus Christ, even though it was there latent within that time, it was rooted in history, which is how prophecy often works on various levels. Enough. So may the Lord bless you and keep you. May his face shine upon you and give you his peace at this Advent season.